welcome our viewers worldwide to CNN 10, your daily objective explanation of what's going on in the world. I'm Carl Azus. Today's show starts in Eastern Asia, where a recent speech by U.S. President Donald Trump was closely watched around the world. Speaking in front of South Korea's National Assembly, its lawmaking body, President Trump addressed the international standoff over North Korea's nuclear program. The day before, he'd said that it, quote, makes sense for North Korea to come to the table and to make a deal that's good for its people and others worldwide. But in his address Wednesday, the American leader warned the North, whose border is 35 miles away from where he was standing, not to underestimate or try the U.S.
The weapons you are acquiring are not making you safer. They are putting your regime in grave danger. Every step you take down this dark path increases the peril you face. North Korea is not the paradise your grandfather envisioned. It is a hell that no person deserves.
For their part, North Korean government officials said, quote, we don't care about what that mad dog may utter because we've already heard enough. They said the United States was threatening them with 3 American aircraft carriers and a submarine currently positioned off the coast of the Korean Peninsula. After his stop in South Korea, President Trump headed for China, a country that accounts for 90% of North Korea's trade. 10-second trivia. Which of these letters is not found in the Greek alphabet? Omicron, Mu, Upsilon, or Z? While Z appears in the English alphabet, it is not part of the Greek alphabet, which contains Zeta. Today, it's tradition for American fraternities and sororities to use Greek letters, and all of those organizations have been suspended indefinitely from Florida State University. The reason? A 20-year-old pledge to the Pi Kappa Phi fraternity died after going to a party last Thursday night. An FSU school spokesman says Andrew Coffey was a junior who'd transferred to the university this semester. He was studying civil engineering. Police say alcohol might have been a factor in Coffey's death, but they're waiting on an autopsy to know for sure. But the university banned all fraternity and sorority events and meetings, and its president says there needs to be a new normal and a new culture for the suspension to be lifted. He wants students to participate in solving the issue. Coffey's death isn't the only problem to come up at fraternities at FSU and beyond. Several fraternity pledges across the U.S. have died in recent years. The CEO of Pi Kappa Phi says the organization's thoughts and prayers are with Coffey's family and friends. A highly toxic poison is being spread across the South Pacific islands of New Zealand. It's laced into carrot chunks and cereal, and it's intended to kill every wild mammal with teeth instead of a beak and fur instead of feathers. Scientists believe that New Zealand has no native land mammals, that only birds and a couple species of bats existed there when humans arrived. Some birds were apparently hunted to extinction, others were decimated by animals like rats that arrived on ships. So the government wants to get rid of its predators.
What's this guy?
This is a pretty special opportunity. This is a takahe. They were only rediscovered high in the mountains in Fiordland in 1948. And they're one of our most endangered birds. There's only 280 left on the planet.
And it's not just the birds on the brink here. The tuatara is New Zealand's most iconic reptile native. Looks like a lizard, but is really the sole survivor of an order that goes back to the dinosaurs.
They're entirely endangered.
Yeah.
So the problem for these guys is, again, they evolved in the presence of avian predators, not mammals.
Right.
And so their response when threatened, from above, when threatened at all, is to freeze. If you freeze and you've got a rat or a stoat or a cat behind you, it's game over.
So Zealandia is one of the last few places a tuatara or a takahe can relax. But Kiwis are not content with just predator-free parks. They want to make New Zealand a predator-free country. It is a plan so audacious in scope it's been called New Zealand's Apollo Project. That is, wipe out every rat, every mouse, every possum, every weasel, hundreds of millions of predatory mammals by the year 2050. And to pull it off, they'll have to spread millions of tons of poison all over this incredibly beautiful country. But as much as Kiwis love the kiwi, not everyone thinks this is a great idea.
While most New Zealanders have said they support protecting their island's native species and the killing of the predators in uninhabited areas, there are concerns about spreading poison around. For one thing, it can kill pigs and deer, which aren't native to the islands, but aren't target predators either. For another, experts say the poison won't work on its own, and neither will things like fences. Some scientists have proposed genetically modifying certain predators to keep them from breeding. Technology for that doesn't even exist now, and some members of the public don't support using it anyway. This project is massive, and so is the cost. Estimates to carry it out range from tens of millions of dollars to several billions, and keeping other invasive species from arriving in the meantime is also a challenge. Next, a great big story about pigments, substances that become paint or ink when they're mixed with liquid. The Harvard Art Museums have more than 2,500 pigment samples. Their collection started over 100 years ago when a museum director noticed that the medieval paintings he'd brought home were quickly deteriorating. So he started collecting pigments as well as paintings.
It can be beetles that come off a cactus. It can be the dried urine of a cow, little insects that grow on an oak tree, a chunk of lead that's soaked in vinegar. It's truly amazing. We're in Harvard University outside the Forbes Pigment Collection. Pigment is a very small particle of coloured material that is mixed in with a binding medium. The pigment gives paint its colour. The Forbes Pigment Collection has been brought together over several decades. We have around 2,500 pigments. We have a lot of very unusual and very rare colours. So this is, I think, one of the more unusually named pigments. It's called dragon's blood. It doesn't come from dragons, it comes from rattan palms, and it gives a very bright red pigment. The unusual aspect of mummy has to do with its source rather than the colour itself. And that comes from Egyptian mummies. And it's the resin that's applied to the outside of the bandages. I think the rarest colour that we have is actually an entire ball of Indian yellow. And this is a pigment that is made from the dried urine of cows that are fed only on mango leaves. If you're looking at a work of art and you want to understand what is original and what's a restoration, you will take a tiny sample of pigment and analyze it. A lot of the pigments are actually toxic, so you don't want to handle the pigments and then go out to lunch. There's a green called emerald green that has an arsenic centre to it. We can use them for telling if something is real or not. People will say this is by a certain artist, and we can look at the materials that are used and decide if those materials were available during that artist's lifetime. If not, then we have to look at who might have painted that picture. I can't pick a personal favourite. It's like asking to pick a favourite child. No, the other 2,400 would feel left out.
A UFO has landed in someone's yard in Boise, Idaho, but what stepped out was completely unexpected. This is a chicken. It's actually a chicken coop, and while it didn't fall out of the sky, the couple who built it loves space stuff. So they took satellite dishes, added some flashing lights, and even climate control to keep the animals warm, and voila, a chicken coop that's said to be out of this world. Now, some of the animals appeared to be a little hesitant to climb back in. You could say they were, but others were plucky enough to call it home. It's like their Star Chick Enterprise, their Millennium Chicken, their USS Defoulant, a truly tasteful place to be cooped up, and away. And we're glad you pecked CNN 10 and hope you'll be again tomorrow. I'm Carl Azuz.